Hey everyone, Caden here from TechTuts.com. In today's video, we're going to be launching a React application using GitHub and AWS's Amplify. Now this video will include a professional workflow that I use as well as millions of other developers out there to not only manage code changes, but get those code changes to the cloud and to a public URL. Now if that sounds like a lot, I know, but it's actually fairly easy and I'd be glad to take you step by step. Now first, before we go any further, I do want to just show you the end result of what we're doing here today. We're not going to do anything fancy inside the React application. We're just going to get it up and running, just the basic Vite React app, and we're going to get that up into a public URL, and that way you can use this workflow to use in your own projects. Now before we dive into any of the code changes or any of the flow that we're going to be working on, there are two accounts that we need to make sure that we have created before starting. We need to make sure you have a GitHub account and an Amazon account for the Amazon console. Now those are both free and I'm not covering how to do that, but please make sure you have both GitHub and an Amazon account created. So I've got my terminal open here in my MacBook, and it doesn't matter if you're on Windows or Mac OS, the process here is going to be the same. But the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have Node installed and make sure that we have Git installed. Now, I'm not going over the process to get these things installed. I will leave something in the description if you need that real quickly down there below, but I'm not going to cover it in the video because the topic of this video is getting the code from your local machine to a public URL that you can use. So the first thing we want to do, make sure we have Node installed. Now I do, and just to make sure, you can do node-v. I've got Node version 22 on here. Same thing with Git. You can do Git version and see what kind of version you have on your Git. I have 2.21. So we're good to go here. I don't need to install anything. We can actually get started. Okay, so the first step is getting that code on our local machine. In order to do that, we're going to do npm create vite at latest, and we're going to give it a name. We're going to say my front end app. That should do it. It's going to ask us some questions. We're just going to say yes. We're going to say it's a regular React application, nothing crazy, no TypeScript, just JavaScript. And we're going to clear that out and we're good to go. So now we have a my React or my front end application in this code folder, so we can change directories into that new my front end app. Then for me, we can just code period to open up VS Code. But if you don't have that command on your machine, just open up the newly created front-end application. Okay, so here we are inside the My Front-End application, just the basic React Vite template. We're going to go ahead and install our dependencies and run this just so we can verify in the browser that it is that basic template. Okay, the dependencies are installed. We're going to run dev now. Not ruin dev, I mean that's kind of funny, but run dev, and this is going to pop open a browser window. Okay, so here we are, guys. We're in that Vite template, basic, very basic React application with the set state example that you get from the Vite installation. We're not even going to change any of this. I just wanted to verify that is what it is. We can come back in here and shut this down now. Okay, so what we need to do now is start a Git repository inside of this React application, tell it to keep track of all the code changes that we care about, commit those changes, and then push them up to our remote GitHub repository. Now that might sound like a lot, but it's actually fairly easy once again, and I will guide you step by step. So first, let's clear this terminal, make it a little bit easier to see here. The first thing we need to do is initialize that GitHub repository inside the application, right? So git init. Now, immediately what you're going to notice is it's going to say initialized empty Git repository. Now this is a local Git repository, and all of the local changes being tracked you will see in the editor over here. Okay, so one thing you'll notice here is this .gitignore. Now the reason I want to bring this up, and it will clarify why the node modules aren't highlighted green like everything else, is that it's telling this Git version tracking software to not track changes from any of these files or folders. And in there is node modules. So long story short, when you're tracking code changes with Git and you don't want Git to track some sort of code change somewhere, you add it to this gitignore file. So we don't want to track the thousands upon thousands of changes inside node modules. So by default, Vite puts node modules inside of its gitignore, which is super useful. Okay, so just to be super clear and to be very, very transparent about this whole process, because I know it can be confusing to start, is that Git is just tracking our code changes in this React application. Once we have some code changes that we want to share to the cloud, like let's say we want to get on a different machine somewhere, or we have a coworker or a friend that wants this code and we want to share it easily, then we will save these code changes and then push them up to the remote repository. Okay, so let's do that step by step. Now, I'm going to use a command git add all, and what that's going to do is that all current changes, so all of these changes in the source control, are now staged for a commit or to be saved. But let's say you didn't want to add all the files, because sometimes you just want to change one file or one text or one piece of whatever, and not the whole thing. Then you can come in here with the GUI or with the terminal and add in files or folders of changes. But we're going to keep it simple today. We're just going to add all the changes to this tracked save. So now that we've got all the changes that we want staged for a commit or a save, we're going to save it or commit it. We're going to git commit, and if you do -m and inside quotes put a message, you will see why this is important in just a moment. Getting this code up. That's all we're going to say. It's going to say create mode. It's going to give us this long message in the terminal saying we did all this. We're going to clear that out, and you're going to see that our track changes and everything went back to gray. Our track changes is nothing, and it seems like we've lost all progress. But really, now we have a list of git commits that we have access to with git log that we can see our track changes. So that message I just made, getting this code up, you can see who made it, me, when it was made, and that message. So that code that's been changed is still here and it is still being tracked. It's just been put in a different spot, so now we can continue working. Okay, so to demonstrate this one more time very quickly, let's say we want to make another change real fast. So we go to our app file. Let's say we want to put a semicolon here, very simple change, right? We're going to come down here, clear out our terminal. We only have one file to change, so I'm going to do that same command, git add all. And now I'm going to commit, git commit, adding semicolon. Okay, successful. We're going to clear that. We're going to say git log. And now we're going to see getting this code up and adding semicolon. Now, for a quick tip for you guys, if you ever need to revert a commit, like let's say I didn't need to make that last change. I didn't need to add that semicolon. We can do git reset, reset, capital letters, head, squiggly mark, and however many commits you want to go back. So if you got 30 commits you want to revert, do 30. But right now, we just have one. So if we do git reset head squiggly mark 1, what's going to happen is it's going to throw that change back into our source control. And from there, we can either delete it and act like it never happened, or we can change it how it needs to be and recommit it and all that good stuff. So I'm actually just going to discard this change completely. We don't need that other commit. And now we're back down to where we were with that getting this code up. Okay, so in order to get our changes up into GitHub, we first have to create a GitHub repository. So here I am on my GitHub account on the new repository page. I'm the owner. My front-end app, just like our React app is called, it's a private repository with no description. So all we're going to do is click create. And now we have this screen. So you can do a drag and drop style of adding files, but we're not doing that because that's not professional. Of course, we need to use the terminal. So we're going to make sure we're on the HTTPS. You'll notice here there's two options for this, but we want to make sure we're on the HTTPS version, and we're going to copy that. Okay, so before we can push any code to that URL that we got from GitHub now, we have to tell Git who we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a username, an email, and also tell Git to use its credential helper to store our information after prompting us to log in the browser. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's actually not. And let's go ahead and knock that out real quick. So the first thing we want to do is set the git config -- global. We want to say user.name, and this is where you're going to put your name in quotes. Click enter once you're done there. The second command is just like the first one, except user.email. Of course, put your email in there in quotes. Click enter. And then finally, probably the most important one is the credential manager. So if we do -- global credential.helper manager. And when you add that one, like I said earlier, when we push this up, it's going to prompt you to sign in your browser. And once you sign in successfully, it'll store your Git information for future use. Okay, so now that we've got all this, we've got all that saved, we can check it, right? So git config -- list. And you can see I've got my name, I've got my email, I've got that credential.helper set to manager. Okay, so we've got all the same values there. Okay, so now that we've got our git config set up, we should be good to go. Now we can do git push. This is where we need that URL, that HTTPS URL. Push, and we're going to say master. Now, it's just going to work for me, and it's going to give me a successful message. But what's going to happen for you is that it's going to pop open a sign-in browser window, and it's going to prompt you for your GitHub sign-in information. And once you sign in successfully, everything should go through just fine. Okay, guys, before I let myself continue rambling, I have to say why I said master here. It's because I'm on the master branch. In this command, git push, that URL, the branch you're on. All right, or the branch you want to push those changes from. So if you're on main, you would say main, but I'm on master, so I said master. And of course, if you named your own branch, whatever you named it, that's what you would put there. Sorry, in my original rambling, I kind of glanced over this little piece of information, but it's super important, so I had to come back over and explain that properly. Sorry. And the screen you'll see will look something like this. It'll be your React app inside of GitHub, just like it is inside of your project, minus the files and folders inside the git ignore. Now we can move on to the last step of deploying this with Amplify to a public URL. So over in our console, we're going to jump into Amplify. I'm already here. Here's my already created projects. But of course, if you're not there, just in the console, just search Amplify and it'll come right up. We're going to click Create New App. It's going to have a list of source control buckets here. We're going to choose GitHub. I'm going to click Next. I think it was going to ask us to sign into GitHub, but I was already signed in there. Now what it's saying here, if you don't see your repository in the drop down above, you need to update the permissions. Okay, so let's see. I don't actually see it in the list here. So what I need to do is click this button. It's going to redirect us to our GitHub information, and it's going to ask us which repositories do we want to have access to inside of Amazon here. We're going to go select repository, and we're just going to choose that new one that we just made, and we're going to click save. Okay, so I think that's all we need to do. We can close this window, we can refresh, and now maybe we have to refresh the whole page. Now inside of here, we should see that front-end application in that drop-down. Right there, my front-end app. Okay, and as we saw before, the master branch is what we want. We're going to click Next. We're going to keep everything default, but feel free to change this as you wish. Yeah, everything looks good. I'm going to click Next. Review this information. Yep, once again, this all looks good to me. We just want the default stuff. Click Save and Deploy. Now, depending on your connection speed and your machine, this may take anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. Let's see here. So once this has told us it's deployed and has this green check mark, you'll notice this purple URL. And if we go to this URL, here is our React app running in a secure and active public URL hosted on Amazon. So not only is this a fast, awesome, and secure way to launch a public URL, a public website through Amazon, we can also demonstrate a professional workflow for updating code bases, for code reviews, and for continuous integration and deployment of code changes. Yeah, all of that with just GitHub and Amplify. So let's jump over here to GitHub. Now, what's going to happen now is that anytime we merge something onto this master branch, we make another branch, we make a pull request, we merge it, it's going to go ahead and launch a updated version to our URL through this Amplify instance. Now, if that sounds a little complicated, let me just show you what I'm talking about. So to demonstrate a PR workflow and the continuous integration deployment workflow, what we're going to do is create a new branch, make some changes, push those changes up, merge them, and watch the deployment take place. It sounds like a lot, but I promise it's not. So first, we just need to make a new branch. Git checkout -b. This will check out a new branch called example. Now, you know what? We'll say PR example. Okay, so now we're on a new branch, PR example. What we're going to do is just come into our app. We'll keep the change simple. We'll just change this to my app. Save it. We're going to git add all. We could just add this file, but since it's only one file, git add all. We're going to git commit this. Example PR flow. Sure. Now we're going to git push. We're going to come back to this code, grab this URL, come back to our editor, paste it in, and the branch we're on now is called PR example. So now if we come back to GitHub, it'll automatically update. PR example has had recent pushes 2 seconds ago. So what you do to make a pull request and start this professional code review process is click compare. It's telling you, hey, you're gonna take the PR branch and push it into master. Now, long story short, there's a lot of protections and security add-ons you can have in this flow that obviously we're not having in a default repository, like mandatory reviews, mandatory checks, mandatory conditions that don't allow you to just merge things. But we're not talking about any of this. We're just talking about a very basic flow. So you put a title, you put a description, not required, but I would recommend it. We're going to create this pull request. Now, in our repository, we have the branch called PR example, and from that branch, we have a PR called title example PR flow to merge that branch into master. Now, like I said before, there's no securities or anything, but if you had them, it would prevent you from just automatically merging that. Like, people would have to actually come in here, review these code changes, say, hey, that looks good to me, come in here and say, I approve you, and click approve. Now, of course, I can't approve my own code, but this is what you would do in a professional setting. Somebody would make a branch, would make a PR, they would put their information on the conversation portion. Your coworkers would come in here, you look at the files changed, you make sure everything works, you click approve, and then once everything's been reviewed and approved, you are going to merge it. Now, what I will say is I would recommend you squash and merge your branches. That's really a personal preference, and I'll tell you why it's a personal preference without going too far down the rabbit hole. When you need to revert some changes that possibly broke production, it's easier to revert one commit for that change than the 40 commits that went into that PR. So if you had like 50 commits in this PR, right now we only have one, but if you had like, let's say 50, and you clicked merge, that master branch now has 50 commits from the new branch. But if you click squash and merge, it takes those 50 commits, turns them into one, and then merges it. So if you need to revert, you don't have to revert 50 commits. You have to revert once. Some workflows call for a squash and merge. Some workflows call for a merge. I personally prefer squash and merge. And that's all I'll say about that. We're going to squash and merge this. Here you can say, squash and merge title and description, all that good stuff for the commit. We're just going to leave it default. All right, it says this has successfully been merged. We can go ahead and delete this branch. You don't have to, but I like to keep my stuff clean. I'm going to delete that. Now, what we're going to see now is, of course, the code has been updated in the master branch in our repository, but over here in Amplify, you'll see this is now deploying again. And when this is done, we will check our website over here to see if it actually worked. Okay, so this has been deployed now, and I can just go back to that public URL. Now, it hasn't been changed because I need to just simply refresh, and there we go. We see this now says my app on the screen. Okay, so that's pretty much the basic flow to get something out there like that on a public URL, but there's probably something you're asking yourself right off the bat here, and that's, what if I don't want this long, horrible looking URL and I want something of my own? Amplify makes that super easy. So if you come into your Amplify application and you go into the settings and you click hosting and you go down to custom domains, here's the screen where you can add a custom domain. Now, I'm not going to do that in this video, But if you want a detailed video of how to do this, how to use different providers for different domains like GoDaddy or Amazon itself, please let me know in a comment. I'd be glad to dive into that in a later video. But just know that for now, we're just going to use the ugly one, and you can add a custom one if you want. One more thing I want to touch on while we're in the settings here, you have your firewall. You can set up extra protection for extra money on here, as well as you have some monitoring options at your disposal in those settings. So I did want to touch on that as a little bit of an extra piece of information for you. Alright guys, that about covers it. We've talked about how you can get your code from your local GitHub repository to the remote one inside of GitHub. We've talked about using Amazon Amplify to take that code inside of GitHub and put it on a public URL. We've talked about the professional code review process as well as the continuous deployment process thanks to Amplify. And we've talked about the additional nice to haves you can do inside of Amplify if you so choose. Alrighty guys, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching this with me. Thank you for hanging out. I hope you guys got something useful out of this. I hope you learned something. I hope you can take what you learned and go build something cool with it. And as always guys, if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment if you want me to go into something in a little more detail than I did in this one on any of these topics that I covered very quickly. I'd be glad to do so. As always guys, until next time, peace.